These two neighbors were driving him crazy, and he was willing to do anything until he found out their dirty secret. Morning. Cameron's in bed with Diane. They're confessing their love for each other, but suddenly he wakes up and realizes it was all just a romantic dream. Later, his parents, Hunter and Carol, start arguing about his future. His dad thinks it's high time Cameron figured out his life plans, while his mom begs him to back off and stop pressuring the kids so much. At work at the ice cream shop, it's another scolding. The manager, Lenny, rips into Cameron for being late and forces him to close up tonight. Cameron tries to get out of it by mentioning a date with Diane, but neither Lenny nor his coworker Liz, who's also pissed about the schedule change, buys that he could score a girl like that. Cameron defends himself. They've been friends forever, and he was the first person she texted when she got back from college. Meanwhile, a mysterious woman moves into the house next door. After his shift, Cameron swings by Diane's and finds her tanning in a bikini. The vibe is ruined by local bullies, Chad and Jason. They accuse him of creeping on her, snatch his phone, and toss it into the street. Diane comes out to see what the noise is about. Cameron tries to prove he wasn't secretly taking pics, but right at that exact moment, a car runs over his phone. Diane takes his side, tells the bullies to get lost, and Cameron heads out too. That evening, Cameron accidentally spots his new neighbor, Victoria, undressing through the window across the way. She catches him looking immediately, and he ducks away in a panic. At dinner, his dad rubs salt in the wound. He's not buying him a new phone because he should have fought back. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. Cameron expects to see his furious neighbor, but it's Diane at the door.
Do you still want to get some pizza?
Yeah.
Let's go.
She apologizes about the whole phone situation. Then Cameron spots his buddy Martin and calls him over, even though Diane begs him not to. Martin gets totally awkward and bails fast. On the walk home, Diane explains why. Martin dumped her out of nowhere right at prom. Cameron is shocked and swears he would never do something like that. Then she brings up another memory, that time they snuck some of her dad's booze. Turns out, she wanted to tell him a massive secret that night, but Cameron just passed out. Out of nowhere, Cameron spots Victoria again and sprints home. He bursts into his bedroom, turns around, and Victoria is mysteriously standing right behind him. Cameron starts frantically apologizing for peeping, clumsily making the excuse that he usually only saw an old lady in that window. Victoria lays down the law. She's crashing at the old lady's place for a bit, and as payback for his peeping, Cameron has to be her personal chauffeur for a few days. Cameron tries to bail, claiming he hasn't paid his car insurance, but Victoria shuts him down. That's a him problem. Later, he drops her off at an office building. To make sure he doesn't ditch her, she snags his keys. A security guard lets her inside. Half an hour goes by, and Cameron gets restless. He walks up to the building, only to see a bloody guard burst out the doors, begging for help. Panicking, Cameron bolts back to the car and watches in horror as Victoria tackles the guy and murders him in cold blood. Reality check: Victoria is a vampire. She tells him that if he wants to stay alive, he keeps driving. Then, she plants a kiss on him before leaving. The next morning, his dad Hunter spots blood on the car. Victoria shows up right on cue, spinning a story about a deer running out into the road. She sweetens the deal by offering to pay Cameron's insurance in exchange for rides. Hunter is all about it, leaving Cameron totally screwed. Later on, Martin finally spills the beans. He dumped Diane at prom because he completely choked and didn't know how to act around a gorgeous girl. He even begs Cameron to put in a good word so he can get a second chance with her. Cut to that night. Cameron is waiting in the car while Victoria handles business inside a building. Suddenly, a dead guy drops right onto the hood. Victoria strolls back, casually licking blood off her lips, leaving Cameron to wash the car on the drive home. A few hours later, the vampire magically pops up in Cameron's bed to drop some lore. Turns out, she's 247 years old. Back in 1890, a rival vampire clan murdered her lover because he refused to join them. Over the last century, most of those enemies relocated to the States. Now, she's tracking them down for pure revenge, aiming to wipe out every single one. Cameron breathes a massive sigh of relief. His neighbor hunts vampires, not people. The next day, Martin begs Cameron to be his wingman on a date with Diane because he's a nervous wreck. Later on, Lenny is completely stunned to see Cameron effortlessly chatting up Diane. That evening, Victoria lays out the game plan. She's taking out one of her last enemies tonight, and then she's hunting down the big boss who murdered her lover. Even though Victoria tells him to stay in the car, Cameron follows her inside the building. They run into the target, who starts blasting. Cameron hits the deck. Victoria lunges and takes the guy out with a brutal neck bite. Cameron gets up and admits he isn't actually shot, he just dropped to the floor to act as a distraction. Before parting ways, Cameron asks Victoria to crash the upcoming date so he has an excuse to leave Martin and Diane alone. The following day, Liz invites Cameron to her friend's band's gig, but he politely passes. At the date, Cameron breaks the painful silence by hyping up Martin's dreams of playing pro baseball. The second Diane hits the restroom, Victoria shows up and pulls Cameron outside. He finally confesses the truth to the vampire. He's been in love with Diane for years. His master plan? Leave Diane alone with Martin so she can finally see how incredibly boring the guy actually is. That night, Cameron points out his local bullies to Victoria. She deliberately provokes Chad into throwing a punch, then coaches Cameron on how to hit back hard. Cameron steps up and delivers a brutal body shot to Chad's ribs, leaving him gasping. The bullies finally agree to back off. In the car, Cameron's wrist is killing him from the punch. Victoria hands him a small vial of liquid, her own blood. She promises it'll heal human wounds instantly without turning him into a vampire. Later that night, Cameron is dreaming about Diane when Victoria suddenly slips into his bed, kissing him passionately, claiming it's a tactic to make Diane jealous. Hunter accidentally walks in on them, gets an eyeful, and immediately backs out. Despite the situation, Cameron pumps the brakes and stops the vampire. He doesn't want to mess things up with Diane and still hopes she likes him back. The next morning at breakfast, his dad gives him a knowing wink. Martin later admits the date was a total train wreck after Cameron left. Cameron shrugs it off, telling him it probably just isn't meant to be. Meanwhile, Victoria pays a visit to the clothing store where Diane works. Cameron vents to Liz about his messy love life and finally agrees to hit up her friend's gig that night. While getting ready for the show, Hunter hands Cameron a pack of gum, but suddenly Cameron spots Diane walking into Victoria's house. He instantly ditches his plans and stays home, leaving Liz waiting at the concert for nobody. Standing at his window, Cameron watches in pure jealousy as Diane and Victoria make out, kill the lights, and hop into bed together. The next morning, Cameron watches Diane leave the neighbor's house. Victoria steps out right after, smirks, and asks if he enjoyed the show. Furious, Cameron tells her he's quitting. But the vampire grabs him by the collar and makes it crystal clear they are finishing this mission together. Later, Cameron tells Martin to ask Diane out again, promising to help him out. He swings by the cafe where Liz slaps him right in the face for ghosting her the night before. Then he heads to Diane's store, where she mentions Martin asked her out yet again. To cap off the day, his mom, Carol, secretly slides him a brand new phone, begging him not to tell his dad. Later on, Cameron wires Martin up with an earpiece for the date so he can feed him lines. Listening in, Cameron hears the whole thing go smoothly. A happy Diane hands Martin her keys to drive wherever he wants. Cameron barks through the mic for Martin to take her home, but Martin goes rogue and drives out to the middle of nowhere. Furious and anxious, Cameron tails them. Peeking from behind a tree, he watches Diane whisper directly into the earpiece before tossing it out the window. She knew he was listening the whole time. Then, out of nowhere, Diane bites Martin's neck. Plot twist, Diane is a vampire too. Freaking out, Cameron runs to the cafe to find Liz, but she's MIA. Diane tracks him down shortly after. Cameron is terrified, convinced she murdered his best friend. Diane just pops the trunk to reveal a very much alive Martin. She explains she just turned him so he'd finally have the strength to play pro baseball. Then she drops her guard. She confesses she loves Cameron. She's been alive for centuries, watched everyone she loved die of old age, and was terrified of losing him if he knew the truth. Cameron forgives her, and they share a kiss while Lenny creeps in the background, secretly watching the whole thing. That evening, Victoria drops a bombshell. She didn't realize Diane was a bloodsucker until she looked closer. Even worse, Diane is a member of the exact rival clan Victoria is hunting, and now Cameron is just bait to draw her out. Sensing Cameron's in trouble, Diane heads to his place. Lenny jumps out from behind a tree, acting tough and threatening to expose her secret to the world. Diane doesn't even blink. She tackles him to the ground and drinks his blood. Problem solved. Minutes later, Diane and Martin burst into Cameron's house to find Victoria holding him hostage. An epic vampire brawl breaks out. Victoria lunges with a blade, but Diane fights back, overpowers her, and pins her to the floor. Time for the ultimate truth. Diane explains that 100 years ago her clan leader lost his mind, and she desperately wanted out. She met Victoria's lover, who promised her safety in his clan and gave her his blood, but her ruthless leader found out and murdered him for it. Hearing the real story, Victoria drops the grudge, apologizes, and forgives Diane. The two vampires decide to team up, ditch the past, and start their own clan. Diane gives Cameron one last goodbye kiss. Meanwhile, a newly vampirized Lenny casually promotes Liz to assistant manager and hits the road with the vampire squad. The next day, Cameron tells his parents he's going to write a book about vampires. Back at the cafe, he spills the entire insane story to Liz. She thinks he's completely full of it, but lets him clock in for his shift anyway. That's a wrap. Thanks for hanging with us. Don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, and hit that bell icon to catch all our newest videos.